The storm rolled over the Montana mountains with a kind of fury that made the earth itself tremble. Mark Dawson stood on his porch, his calloused hand resting lightly on the railing while his daughter Lily pressed against his side, her small fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. The night sky was alive with restless thunder and jagged streaks of lightning. He'd seen storms before, plenty of them, but this one felt different, like it was carrying something unnatural on its shoulders. It came suddenly, without warning. A low, mechanical groan cut through the thunder. Mark frowned, lifting his gaze. At first, it was just a spark in the sky, a flicker that might have been mistaken for lightning. Then the shape of it tore through the dark clouds, a jet, burning, breaking apart as it plummeted. A trail of fire carved through the heavens before crashing into the valley below with a force that rattled the windows of the cabin. Lily gasped, clutching her father tighter, her young face pale with fear. "Daddy, a plane," she cried, her voice quivering. Mark's instinct surged alive. He turned to her quickly, crouching to meet her eyes even as the glow of flames flickered in the distance. "Listen to me, Lily. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Do you understand?" She nodded, tears glimmering in her wide eyes. He pressed a kiss to her forehead before grabbing his lantern and the battered survival kit he always kept by the door. Within seconds, he had mounted his horse and was thundering down the rain-soaked trail, his jaw tight, his mind sharp with urgency. The smell hit him first, smoke and scorched metal carried by the wind. The trees thinned, and the sight that greeted him was something out of a nightmare. The private jet lay torn open, its fuselage twisted, flames licking at its shattered frame despite the downpour. Sparks hissed and popped, metal screeched as it warped under heat. He dismounted, lantern swinging, and forced himself forward. Voices, faint, broken, echoed from inside the wreck. Someone was alive. Mark clambered over twisted debris, ignoring the sting of heat against his skin. He wrenched open what had once been a door, coughing against the smoke that billowed out. There, amid the wreckage, lay a woman. Her arm was pinned beneath a bent steel beam, her expensive dress shredded, her face streaked with soot and blood. Despite the chaos around her, her eyes locked onto his with startling clarity. "Help, please," she whispered, her voice raw but steady. Mark's muscles strained as he wedged his shoulder beneath the beam. Every fiber of him fought against the crushing weight until, with a grunt of effort, it shifted just enough for him to drag her free. He scooped her into his arms, her body trembling against him, her breath shallow. "You're safe now," he told her, though the roaring flames behind them made the words feel fragile. Her hand clutched at his shirt. "Don't leave them, the pilots, inside." Mark's gut twisted. He laid her gently on the wet grass, binding her bleeding arm with a strip of cloth from his kit, then turned back to the inferno. The cockpit was already consumed, flames raging too hot, too high. He fought his way close, but the heat drove him back, searing his lungs. The pilots were gone. There was nothing more he could do. When he returned to her, she was struggling to sit, her face pale with grief as though she already knew what his silence meant. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but her jaw set with steel-like determination. "We have to move," Mark said firmly, scooping her up once more. The storm was still fierce, the trail ahead treacherous, but his cabin was their only hope. Step by step, he pushed through the mud and rain. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring strange words, bored, betrayal, stock, phrases that belonged to boardrooms, not burning wrecks in the wilderness. He didn't understand, but he held her tighter each time her voice faltered, refusing to let go. By the time the warm glow of his cabin came into view, Mark's body ached from the burden, his muscles trembling with exhaustion. He shoved the door open, and Lily ran forward, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and relief. "Daddy," she gasped, staring at the woman in his arms. "Blankets, water, now," Mark ordered, his voice sharp but calm. Lily obeyed without hesitation, hurrying to fetch what she could. Mark laid the woman by the fire, covering her with wool. For the first time since the crash, he allowed himself to exhale. She was alive. They were safe, for now. But as the storm raged outside, he couldn't shake the sense that what had begun tonight was far from over. The first light of morning slipped through the cracks of the shutters, painting long golden lines across the log cabin floor. Mark sat at the table with a steaming mug of coffee cupped in his rough hands, every muscle in his body aching from the night's ordeal. He had barely slept, his ears tuned to every sound outside, every creak inside. The storm had passed, but his mind hadn't found peace. Lily lay curled in a chair beside the fire, still asleep, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. On the rug near the hearth, the woman stirred. She blinked slowly, her lashes trembling before her eyes finally opened. For a moment, she looked disoriented, her gaze drifting over the shelves of canned goods, the photographs on the mantel, the simple wooden walls. Then her eyes settled on him. She struggled to sit up, wincing as her bandaged arm reminded her of its wound. "You saved my life," she said softly, her voice still raw. Mark set down his mug. Anyone would have done the same. Her lips curved faintly, as though she almost wanted to laugh. "Not anyone. Most people would have waited for someone else to show up. You ran into fire for a stranger." Mark shrugged, uneasy with praise. Someone needed help. That's enough reason. For a while, the only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the gentle patter of rain dripping from the cabin roof. The woman studied him, her gaze steady, and he realized she wasn't just grateful, she was measuring him, weighing his words against something unspoken. Finally, she drew in a long breath. "My name is Evelyn Carrington," she said. Mark frowned. The name struck something faint in his memory. He leaned back in his chair. "Carrington, as in Carrington Global?" "Yes." Her tone was calm, but there was a flicker of tension in her eyes. "I'm not just Evelyn. I'm the owner, the chairwoman, the billionaire people love to read about in business magazines." Mark let the words hang in the air. He stared at the woman wrapped in one of his quilts, hair tangled, soot still clinging to her skin, and tried to reconcile her with the headlines he'd occasionally seen in town. He shook his head slightly. "Last night you were just someone who needed pulling out of a fire. That's all I saw." Her eyes softened at that, and for a moment her polished, guarded expression cracked. "That's the kindest thing anyone has said to me in a long time." But then her shoulders straightened. The warmth in her gaze gave way to something heavier. "There's more you need to know." She lowered her voice, glancing toward Lily still asleep near the fire. "That crash wasn't an accident. It was deliberate." Mark's jaw clenched, his body instinctively tensing. "What are you saying?" "The deal I was flying back from, it threatens powerful people, men who stand to lose billions if I succeed. I've had threats before, but I ignored them. Last night, I don't think they intended for me to live." Her voice faltered, but her eyes didn't leave his. "And now, because you pulled me out, you and your daughter may be targets, too." The room seemed to shrink around him. Mark's eyes flicked toward Lily, peaceful in her quilt, and a chill slid through his chest. Danger had walked straight into his home. He had brought it here himself. "You're telling me someone tried to kill you?" His tone was low, sharp. "Yes." Evelyn didn't look away. Her hand trembled slightly, but she clenched it into a fist. "And they'll come looking. They'll find out I survived. Which means your quiet life out here, it may not stay quiet for long." Mark pushed to his feet, pacing once across the cabin. Every instinct screamed at him to protect Lily. But the woman by his fire wasn't just a helpless stranger anymore, she was a storm wrapped in silken steel, and he had walked straight into its path. She leaned forward, urgency breaking through her calm mask. "I don't ask for much, but please, don't send me away yet. I have people I can reach, people who can ensure your safety. Until then, I need somewhere safe. I need you." Mark turned slowly, his eyes locking on hers. He searched her face, looking for deceit, but all he saw was exhaustion, pain, and a fierce determination that matched his own. His chest tightened with conflict. Finally, he nodded once, his voice steady. "You can stay, but hear me, my daughter comes first. If anyone sets foot on this mountain with bad intentions, they'll regret it." Evelyn's breath released in something between a sigh and a sob. She reached out, her hand brushing his rough knuckles. "I believe you. And Mark, saving me may have put you in danger, but it might also change your life in ways you never imagined." The fire snapped loudly, filling the silence that followed. Outside, the mountain stood tall against the morning sun, quiet and unknowing. But inside the small cabin, Mark felt it in his bones, his world had shifted overnight, and nothing would ever be the same.